So I've just gone through and repeated the whole process again. Exactly what we did with the left arm, I've repeated onto the right arm. As you can see, that all deforms nicely. And just the ribbons follow exactly where the arm goes, and the spine and the legs do the same. So that's all done. We've also gone in and added the same to the spine, so we get some nice animation there and deformation. We've got our controls so that we can sort of deform the character even more, so if we want more of a cartoon effect. Now from here you could just use the bind joints from these ribbons, as well as the hand joints, the head, and a few others, and you could skin this and this would work fine. If your character is supposed to be flexible and fluid, then this would be absolutely fine. But we still have a bit more work to do. And if I just quickly demonstrate, we have a slight problem. If I bend this elbow like so, you can see that this joint here is where the arm should be, but this joint here is being pushed out because it's following where the NURBS surface is deforming, which is what it should be doing. And we've got the same problem at the wrist, and that's because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 joints influencing this NURBS surface. So the CVs round here are being influenced by the elbow, and the CVs round here are being influenced by the end wrist joint, control joint here. Now we could go in and say, well, let's just remove the influence from the elbow there. Let's reset this. So we could remove the influence here from the elbow and force it to follow this upper arm control here, which would work fine because we've got our extra isobars in there. So we could paint the weights to that instead, and that would give us a nice crease. The problem we would have though is because these CVs here are weighted to this joint, as soon as I move this up, this area is all going to move up as well, and you're going to end up with a nice curve here, but then an angle, and then a sharp drop, and so on. Whereas we want sort of a nice flow across the arm, rather than it being angular. And as I said before, if you are working on more of a fluid character, then this could work and be absolutely fine. But we're just going to add in a few extra controls that are going to help us to maintain that elbow, that sharp elbow and the sharp wrist, to give you a straight arm. But then you can also go in and use these tweak controls and maintain this nice deformation here. Now the thing is, we're just going to have to backtrack slightly. Now I didn't show this part earlier on because I think the ribbon as it is now, like I mentioned, can be used for a lot of things, so it was important just to show that stage. But now we're just going to enhance it slightly just to get those angles that we need. So first thing we need to do is we're going to select the ribbon and we're going to set envelope. Well, we're going to select the ribbon, then the skin cluster, and we're going to set envelope to 0. What that's going to do is remove the influence from the control joints we have down here, and move the NURBS surface back to the position that it was originally bound in or skinned in. Now we need it up here because what we're going to do is add a couple of extra joints, and we need those to influence the skin cluster too. And if we attached the joints down here, you would as soon as you painted the weights, you would end up with an offset. So you have to put the ribbon back in its default position before you add any more joints to it. Okay, so let's just jump in, and what we're going to do is we're just going to find the follicle joints, and we just need to duplicate a few. So I'm going to duplicate the elbow joint here and the one nearest the shoulder, so that's bind 1 and bind 5. So I'm going to duplicate those. So the elbow one we're just going to call, let's just keep that as left arm elbow fix, because that's going to be the one that we're going to use to bind to the surface. and we'll call that fix end, just to indicate that's going to be the end joint, and then we will parent that to the elbow fix. So you see we've got a short joint chain just going from the elbow up to the shoulder. So now we're going to do the same. We're going to duplicate the elbow again and the wrist. I'm going to duplicate those, elbow fix, but this time let's call it wrist fix. And then we want that other joint that we duplicated, which is here, and we'll call that end 2. And then I will move that down so that's parented. So there we've got like 2 basic joint chains. So now we've got those, I'm just going to move them out of the hierarchy. So they're just on their own. So the reason we've created these 2 is, if we use the elbow as an example, basically as the arm bends, we want this elbow joint to always point to the shoulder. So no matter what we do, that will always look at where the shoulder is. And then we can use this joint and we can influence the CVs around here to this joint. The other CVs here will then go to the bind 5 joint, which will be the elbow joint. So we've essentially got 2 joints in the same position, and that will help to give us that angle. And the same with the wrist. This will always point at the elbow. So no matter where we point the elbow or move the elbow control, that will always look at it, and that will help us to maintain those sort of straight arms when we need them. Now before, when we wanted one object to look at another, when we were doing the controls, we used an aim constraint, but this time we're just going to do a much simpler setup. We're just going to go to skeleton, create IK handle, make sure the solver is set to single chain solver, select left arm elbow, hold down control and select left arm elbow end fix. So we've got one there, and then we're just going to repeat that and create another one for the wrist, and then let's call that left arm wrist IK handle. And then let's go up to here and we will go left arm elbow, because that's the IK handle controlling where the elbow is looking at, and that's the IK handle controlling where the wrist is looking at. So now we're going to attach these 2 joints to the NURB surface, so it's using the same skin cluster, and then we can make them affect that skin cluster. So I've selected the joints, just the fixed joints, we don't want the end joints. Select the NURB surface and go to skin, edit influence, add influence. Now you'll notice if I reset the settings, all I'm doing is turning on lock weights, and all that's going to do is that's going to attach those joints to the NURB surface, but with a weight value of 0, which means it's not going to affect anything just yet. If you don't have lock weights on, Maya will automatically apply default weighting, and it can affect all your other weighting values as well. So I like to just turn on lock weights, and then I know that I'm working sort of with 0 influence, and then I can just add to it. So if I click add, so those 2 are now added to the influence. Now I can't move them around. Well, I can move them around, but they're not going to do anything yet, because remember we set the envelope to 0. But what we can do is we can just go in and paint the weights. So skin, paint skin weights. Let's open that up. So we can see these are yellow here and locked. So I'm just going to unlock those. So let's go to elbow fix. Now at the moment, nothing is being influenced. So we know we want this section to be influenced by that joint. Just paint that there, and then we want that to gradually fade away, so we'll maybe just set that to 0.5. There we go. So that's all we need to do there. Then let's go down to the wrist. So we're already got this set to 0.5, so let's set that there like so, and then we'll move it up to 1, and then we will influence that. So we've got a nice influence going up like so. Just going to check the end joint. We don't want that to influence anything, so I'm going to set that to 0 and then flood it. So let's just check the wrist, check the lower. So that's gone. We just need to tweak that. Just add that back in. So that's all working nicely. So that's the weights fixed. Now we need to just enable the envelope again, and we can see that blend back because it's now being influenced by these control joints, which is right, but obviously this area has been influenced by the elbow fixed joint, and this area is now being influenced by the wrist fixed joint. The problem is these are up here, and we just need to snap these back down into position. So let's just close those down. We need our control joints. So I'm just going to open up the root, the end, the middle, like so. So let's change this hierarchy and get everything sitting nicely. We need the elbow to go under the, obviously because this is up near the shoulder, so we want it up underneath the root joint. And then I'm just going to zero out the attributes, so that just snaps it to that joint there. And the wrist IK handle is going to go under the middle joint, like so. And again, just zero that out. And there we go. We can already see that these joints are now maintaining the orientation and pointing exactly where we want them to be. So now let's parent the root of these extra joint chains. So we got the left elbow fix is going to go to, now we don't want it underneath the joint. We just want it underneath the control because we want it to move with the control. And then again, zero that out, and that snaps that down there. And then the wrist, yeah, that's going to go here to the end joint, like so. Well, end control, but we don't have a control here, so we'll just put it underneath the offset group, like that, and then we will zero that out. So that's done. And now if we move the arm in, we now have zero deformation here. The elbow is nice and straight and angular, and so is the wrist. If I reset that, plus we've maintained this nice curve here and this one here for when we come to animate this and deform it. You know, we've still got sort of nice fluid movements with the joints, but we've also got the option of having an angular arm if he's being animated, and we don't need those joints for that particular movement. So there we've got the best of both worlds. So now the ribbon works in a much more predictable way. We just need to add one more extra joint, and that's so that we can help distribute the weights correctly around the elbow. Now we did this in part 1 of this course. Towards the end, if you watch the last video, we added a couple of extra joints in there just so that we could move the arm around and the weights would follow around just as we needed them. So we're just going to repeat that here. Now for any other normal character you may not need this extra joint, but just for this guy we just need that extra bit of influence where that joint is. So let's go back to our follicles, and we know bind joint 5 is the elbow joint, so I'm just going to duplicate that and I call it left arm elbow fix. Although actually I'm not going to call it, we already have something called left arm elbow fix, I think. So let's just call it left elbow, or we could just call it left arm bind left arm elbow bind. That makes more sense because then we've got that bind in there, which is good because if we then have to do a search, you know, we'll just can just search for bind left. If if I can spell arm right. Left arm, elbow, bind. And then we just need to parent that to the follicle before it. So that one is here, and that's 4. Like so. So basically that is just going to follow the orientation of this joint here. Just so that we can fix these weights on the elbow again, just like we did with the NURBS plane. So we've got that extra joint there that we can then use to help fix the weighting down here, and that's mainly for the sort of ball and socket that we've got down on the elbow area. But if we move that around now and we stretch, the joint's going to stay here, but we want it to maintain the position of that joint there. So what we can do is we can maintain the orientation of this joint, but it will also move with the elbow. So now we've got all these extra joints in. In fact, let's just... So now we've got all these extra joints in, we can start to think about actually attaching the skin and seeing how everything deforms. And just to help us out in the future, in case we have to remove the skin and attach it again, what we're going to do is just create a quick selection set. So I'm just going to open this up and I'm going to select these bind joints. I think that needs to go under the follicle actually. Not under the actual, because it's going to get influenced twice then. So yeah, so that needs to go under the follicle, not under there. So right, let's go back on track. So let's select the joints that we are going to use to drive the arm model. And then I'm just going to go to create sets, quick selection set, and let's call this bind joints arms. Now obviously here, so you would have already gone through and added those extra controls into the other limbs, and then when it comes to this stage you'd be selecting the joints on the right arm as well and adding those into the selection set, which is down here. Set members of the set, so just go to display, set members, and that's just going to then allow you to quickly look in and see what joints are in there. So we've got the arm joints, but we also need the hand joints in too, because obviously they need to deform the model as well. So I'm just going to quickly go in, select those joints, then I'm going to use the middle mouse button and drag them in too. So there we have a selection set, and we can quickly just right click, select set members, and that's just going to select all those joints for us. So let's bring back the model. And I'm just going to hide everything apart from the arm, because we're just going to be testing this for now. So let's select those joints, those bind joints for the arms. Select the arms geometry as well. Go to skin, bind skin. Now we're just going to have it set to selected joints. Everything else is fine, and maximum influence is 3, because we don't want too many influences over from each joint. Bind the skin. So now let's just hide that NURB surface. So now we have the arm attached. As you can see, we can move that around, and that's working quite nicely. Ignore this arm because obviously there were no joints there to attach that bit of geometry to, so it's just going to follow around there. Obviously you would have added your right arm into the selection set, and then when you skinned it, that would be fine. So there we've got quite a good starting point for the weights. And obviously we're going to need to do some work on the weights. So let's just go in and just start to block out some weights now. So what I'm going to do is, this is quite a quick way of doing this. I'm just going to select a vertex on this ball joint here and then the main palm. I'm going to hold down Control, right click and go to shell. So that's selecting the whole of that model. So now if I go to Skin, Paint Skin Weights tool, now you see those vertices are still selected. So I can go down to the left wrist like so, and I want that to be fully influenced by that joint. So I can click Flood, and there it's gone completely white. And we can do the same with the fingers. So select the ball socket, go down, thumb 2, Flood. Thumb 3, Flood. So you get the idea there. You could just repeat the process for the rest of the fingers. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause the recording. I'll just whip through and get the fingers done. It won't take long, and then I'll just pick it up in a second when those are done. So I've just gone through and applied exactly the same process to the fingers. So as you can see, they're all now in this area here. And we will weight that to the wrist. Nope, not the wrist, sorry. 9, like so. Can flood that. So that's just going to stay where that joint is. But we also want the vertices here at the end arm. And the same with this. I just go to wireframe so we can just see the end of that geometry there. So I can just see it there. So if I just double click, so that's selected that loop, flood that. And then let's just do the same with this socket here. So we don't want that to be elbow bind, we want that to be the actual other elbow, which is going to affect the upper arm. And again, we just need the end of that, so let's just find that. So if I select some of the faces, that'll tell me where the end is. There we go. And then I select one vertex, and then double click on another, and it will automatically select the edge loop. So let's see how that's looking. So that's deforming and working much better. And as you can see, the wrist area works quite well. Let's just rotate this on its own. So that's working independently. There's no sort of stray vertices. And we can also adjust this here, adjust this here. Now it looks quite angular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press 3 to change it, to activate smooth mesh. I'm just going to ignore that. What this will do is this will just smooth it all out. So as you can see, we've got some nice bends there, and I can move this around. And what else we can do is, if I just turn that off, we can go back to our sign deformers. If I turn that on like so, excuse me, so we can just adjust our offset and we can get the arm waving like so. Let's just turn the amplitude down a bit. So as you can see, we can just deform the arm like that. Now the shoulder joint here, we could do the same as what we did with the others and make sure that's fully weighted to the root joint here, but you can play around with that and just see what works best for you. So there we have completely updated the arm. It's all now working nicely, and we've also painted the weights and got them working with the fingers. So, as is the tradition, I'm going to let you guys just go through and apply it to the right arm and both legs. And I'm going to do that too. And I'm also going to use the same principles to get the spine and the head working. And then we will come back in the next video and I'll just go over some more extras that you could possibly do to make your rig more user friendly. But then I think after that we're pretty much done for this for part 2 of this rigging course. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please let me know in the comments below. Also let me know if you have any questions and tell me what future videos you would like to see. And why not say thanks and also earn exclusive rewards with a small donation via my Ko-fi page. As always, remember to like this tutorial and subscribe to my channel. And remember to hit that bell icon so you're kept up to date with notifications on future videos and posts. This is Ant CGI signing off, and I will see you on the next one.